Hello, everybody, and welcome to day number 2 of DreamHack Winter 2018. My name is Cora Giorgio, and the winter vibes are in full force here on the desk. Joining me, we have Lorinda and Derek Brown. Welcome back, guys. How you doing today?
I'm being Christmassy.
Feeling very holly and jolly.
That's what I want to hear. Frankly, I think we all look quite nice, quite spiffy.
Is that all?
It's a nice
we
jumper.
get?
It's a great jumper.
It is.
Very nice, yeah.
Available now at the DreamHack shop.
Limited quantities. No, obviously we're being a little bit festive here on the desk today, but we have a lot to celebrate because we have many players who are performing very, very well. Coming into day 2 here, of course, yesterday we had 5 rounds of Swiss. Today we're going to be doing 4 more rounds of Swiss and then a cut to the top 16 players. From there it will be single elimination. We're going to play through the top 16 today, featuring 1 or 2 of the matches on stream, time depending. And then tomorrow will be all of the top 8 matches, as well as the semifinals and finals streamed for your viewing pleasure. Thank you, of course, to Corsair for making this entire event possible. It wouldn't be a tournament without Corsair sponsoring. And now we can get down to business. Lorinda, how are you feeling after day number 1? Do you enjoy the action yesterday?
I enjoyed. There's so many weird things happened yesterday. Some good, some bad. Obviously, the highlight being Tyler's self-destruction versus the Gunspire. But
ooh,
I mean, you've got to make a highlight out of those moments as well. But the standard of play was really high in a lot of the games.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that in particular for a second, though. Even the best players forget about the cards that they don't play with all of the time, though. What happened there, Derek?
Well, it's just the trap that top-tier players fall into, where they ignore some of the less common aspects of Hearthstone, like the random effects that can come into play through Hagatha, because why would a ladder grinder ever worry about Black Hell Gunspire? It's never going to come up in their games. Oh, no, wait. It did.
Yeah, Tyler tweeted afterwards saying he just thought it was a 3-8, had absolutely just, in that moment, obviously he knows what Black Hole Gunspire does, but in that moment, completely forgot that it did anything. He was volcanoed in a spectacular fashion and ended up winning the series, however. So Tyler going into today, I believe 4-1, looking really solid, needing to get 4 points from this event to secure his preferred Masters tier. So that is going to be quite interesting to see if he's able to accomplish that goal. But first up, we've got some 5-0 players. It's going to be Faeli taking on Bozzzton. And Faeli had a really good performance in DreamHack Summer, also in Sweden. And today he is 5-0 heading into round number 6. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, very much so. And he's also probably the player with the most versatile stuff. You look at even the top players, they tend to prefer Last Hero or Conquest, but Faeli just gets it done. He's been to 2 different finals already this year. One in Oslo, one in Singapore. And he just can play any format and just gets equally good results in either format. And he's currently looking for a team, I believe. So, yeah, get those requests in, because this is a guy who should be on a team. He's just doing so well across the formats. Even like Hunter Ace does better in Conquest than Last Hero, for instance.
Yes, he absolutely should be on a very competitive team. He's a player who had his first real year in the competitive spotlight this year, but since this year, obviously, he's been performing so well. I'm expecting big things for him next year. Bozzzton is a player who's been around for quite a while, kind of under the radar, been on a couple of teams, but hasn't had any of those really fabulous finishes. What do you think about Bozzzton, Derek?
He is just one of those players who gets points. Every season on ladder, he will get the top 25, top 50 that he needs, because I totally agree with you. He has not had a particularly flashy year, hasn't been making those finals, isn't a particularly big streamer. And so for a lot of the less well-versed members of the competitive Hearthstone scene, they may have just, he will have flown under their radar, but he is way up there in terms of points. He's in the top 10 in Europe, I believe, in terms of points gained this year.
Yeah, he's literally the player. Like I say, like a lot of players with this, that, they've got these stats, but this is the player, when someone says name an under-the-radar player that I might have missed, Bozzzton is always the first name I come up with, because he's been to multiple playoffs, he's done really well. He's always there on 6-3, which is why nobody notices him. 6-3, 7-2, lose top 16, that sort of thing. And he's just better than that. And I can't keep saying every player's better than that, but he really is just one of those guys who could easily win 2 tour stops in a row.
Yeah.
He just hasn't.
I could see it happening. His name might get you the most points in Scrabble, but unfortunately, he just doesn't have those wins for himself right yet. But maybe this could be the event. I could easily see either of these guys making a run to the finals and even earning themselves that championship title here at DreamHack Winter 2018. But let's talk a little bit about lineups. We got to see Faeli on stream yesterday, I believe, and in his first round, he defeated one of his loose rivals, Fury Hunter, who actually won DreamHack Summer 2018 and defeated Faeli in the semifinals there, I believe. So Faeli already overcame that challenge in round number 1 yesterday. So today he's going to have to beat Bozzzton if he wants to continue that undefeated record that he's got going. But looking at lineups that these players have brought to the table, for Faeli it is an even Paladin, a token Druid, a Death Rattle Hunter, and an even Warlock. Bozzzton a little bit different. He has Mally Druid, even Warlock, Shudderwalk Shaman, and Death Rattle Hunter. And a lot of the results that we were seeing yesterday that were very, very good were coming out of that Death Rattle Hunter, looking like a very, very formidable deck.
Yeah, for both players here, they've got what I think are generally considered 3 top-tier classes at the moment, at least in the last hero standing format, of Druid, Hunter, and Warlock, because they have a good amount of game versus aggro, but very good anti-control decks as well to kind of counteract the meta. Interesting difference we see in the Shudderwalk versus the Even Paladin, both of which have had pretty mixed results, I think it's fair to say, so far this tournament.
Yeah, and the Shudderwalk taking on the Token Druid will be interesting because that matchup has changed. It's just straight up harder for the Shudderwalk than it was. Because you can no longer double Lightning Storm
within
one turn with Electra. So we don't know how much difference that makes, but obviously it makes a big difference.
Yes, there was no public patch notes or anything made about it, but the way that Electra Storm Surge used to operate with removal is that, say you go Electra Lightning Storm. The first Lightning Storm activates, Death Rattles on the opponent's board then would activate, say it's Wisps into Treants, and then the second Lightning Storm would activate. That's not the case anymore. Now both of Lyra's spells activate before any interactions take place on the board. Same would go for Volcano or Lightning Bolt. So that certainly changes the matchup quite a bit.
And in fairness, it is in the patch notes, nobody read them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what?
Somebody complained, it's like, here's the patch notes. Sorry.
Well, you know what? Usually that gets pointed out, though.
I mean,
yeah, it was in the patch notes, so...
I'm surprised that nobody found that.
Let's be honest.
Professional players reading what their game does might be...
Yeah, well, Tyler didn't read Black Hole Gunspire.
Yes, didn't he read the card, let alone the patch notes.
That's for sure. Otherwise, he would have hexed that bad boy. Well, you know what? Hindsight is 20/20. In any case, that does certainly change that matchup a little bit. But we can go ahead and check out the bans and see if that is even a matchup that is possible here for these two players. Faeli has had his Hunter banned away. I like that ban. The Hunter just seems like if you don't have an overtly aggressive deck, Hunter is too powerful and too capable of sweeping the lineup. Bozzzton will have his Warlock out of contention, so that's the even Warlock for Bozzzton and the Death Rattle Hunter for Faeli. That leaves Druid, Paladin, and Warlock, as well as the Hunter, Shaman, and Druid. So Druid versus Shudderwalk Shaman is potentially a matchup we could be seeing.
Yeah, I like Faeli's strategy here. It feels to me like he was going into the tournament expecting to ban even Warlock quite a lot, because when you're bringing Token Druid instead of the much more common Malagos or even Togwaggle Druid, you're quite severely limiting your matchup against even Warlock, I think it's fair to say. So to get that out of the way, and then you can be trying to target the Shudderwalk Shaman, even the Death Rattle Hunter is a pretty good matchup for the Token Druid. It feels like there's a good strategy for me here from Faeli.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised we haven't been seeing more Token Druid than we have. At DreamHack Atlanta, Togwaggle Druid was far more prevalent than anybody expected, and Mally Druid was kind of underperforming, I would say. Token Druid was looking pretty good at Atlanta as well. Here, however, Mally Druid, I think, is back in full force. Very little Tog Druid so far, and Token Druid kind of still performing well, but has fallen out of favor a little bit, and it's interesting because it's only been about a week and a half, 2 weeks since DreamHack Atlanta even took place.
Yeah, it's really strange how quickly the meta can shift. And I know we said yesterday in cast, it's strange that Boar Control didn't bring, he's 5-0, this is why I'm making this point.
Yeah.
Didn't bring like the best 4 decks, which is his normal strategy. He actually brought the best 4 decks against the Atlanta meta. He tweeted out this morning.
Makes a lot of sense.
So he filtered out all the stuff that he didn't think was going to be here, went through the Atlanta meta, put that into a site, and then that's his strategy. So beating last time's best decks is a thing. That's why we're not seeing them here, because I think the good players, the top players, are beating the Atlanta meta. So it's probably down there somewhere on the 3 and 2s and the 2 and 3s.
Well, we're going to see how the meta continues to evolve over the course of today. Obviously, we have 4 rounds of Swiss remaining, but we want to know who you at home are rooting for in this series in particular. Make sure you're following the channel. Go hashtag Faeli or hashtag Bozzzton in the chat. That's Bozzzton with 3 Zs. Make sure you get all of your Z's for your vote to be counted correctly. We want those votes to count. And I got to ask you guys, Lorinda, do you have any preferences here? You think it's Faeli or Bozzzton?
I think I pick Faeli for every single match he ever plays. So I think it's time for Bozzzton to have one. I'm going to go for Bozzzton on this. I'd like to see him. I'm voting with a heart again. I think I'd like to see both these guys get to top 16, but I would like to see Bozzzton show what he's made of.
I am going to go against you, mostly just to be a contrary Mary, but I like Faeli's strategy. I think bringing the Token Druid, banning away the Even Warlock, which has been a pretty consistent deck so far, obviously it's just decent against everything, is a good way to go for. Leaving the Hunter up and kind of soft targeting it with the Even Paladin and Token Druid is a strong strategy.
All right, well, I'm going to break the tie. I'm going to go with Faeli here, I think. He's, a player that I've come to know as being very consistent, very capable, and having had a good performance at DreamHack Summer, I would really like to see him take it all the way down to the finals, I think, in this event. So Boston's a strong competitor. He's not out of it by any means, but I am going to give my vote to Faeli. Let's see what you at home think is going to happen with this series. Did you vote for Faeli or did you vote for Bozzzton? Overwhelmingly in favor of Faeli.
I
And you know
can't
what?
spell Bozzzton.
I think that's one thing. I think the other is we're just not seeing Bozzzton nearly as much in competitive play right now. He's certainly had times in the spotlight. He's had plenty of experience on the stage, but in the last couple months, Faeli has simply been more prevalent than Bozzzton.
Yeah. Can't argue with that one, unfortunately. Much as I'd love to. It's a bit early to start arguing anyway.
I do love to argue, but we'll save the really big arguments for later today. We are going to jump into things right away. Day number 2 of DreamHack Winter starts right now.
Much easier to argue with Cora when she's not here. Isn't that right, Darrett?
It is.
So,
What an idiot.
as we go over to the players there, and Faeli and Bozzzton getting ready for the first game of the day, how hard do you think it is to go to bed pretty late last night, get up and have to get right up from the start at a crucial point?
It can be quite exhausting. It was a long old day yesterday. I think, however, the first round of day 2 is going to be a fair bit easier than the last round of day 1. I think that's when the fatigue really starts to set in, is at the end of a day, when you've been playing all day and everything just stops making sense anymore, as we saw again with Tyler's now infamous play of leaving up the Black Howell Gunspire. But for both of these players, I think they are fresh coming in with Bozzzton's 5-0 record, only having lost 2 games, I think we heard from production, in this entire tournament. I think that is going to be spurring him on and giving him the energy he needs to be taking this series.
We have turned our curse.
Just confusing myself entirely. You know that thing where you write the names the wrong way around?
I
It
hate
shouldn't
that.
make any difference at all to how you cast.
Yeah.
Done that and it's
Throws you off so hard.
Completely lost the plot for a second there. So this is an interesting matchup. This is a matchup that everyone says is really awkward for the Paladin, but I just don't agree.
Yes. So I have it's an interesting matchup, I agree, because I feel like when Even Paladin first started coming back, obviously there was the first instance of Even Paladin with Call to Arms. That's a different version of the deck. I'm ignoring that meta. When it came back in a big way, the main reason is people were saying it's good versus Druid. You play Corpse Taker, you play Blessing of Kings. Druid struggles to deal with that. But I do feel like that was another instance of people feeling smart and feeling smug with themselves because they had something that beat Druid, quote unquote.
And also on ladder, the Druid's mulliganing incorrectly. In a tournament, this is not odd Paladin, which is what, you mulligan and you find out, no, it's even Paladin. In this, it's not that, so the Druid is favoured, I believe, but I think people have gone the other way again. It's like they've learned that Druid is okay, and they go, Druid's super favoured.
Yeah,
I see here Faeli's going to make a small board, get it killed off before the spreading plague comes down, and then he's going to make a big minion and say, do you have naturalize?
I think it's pretty close as a matchup. I think I would probably still favour the Even Paladin, but again, that comes from playing Even Paladin on ladder against random Hearthstone players, not Bozzzton, one of the best Hearthstone players we have in Europe.
And it's also not new anymore. Quite often when you've got the new deck, you have the advantage of you've built this to play against Druid.
They don't know how to play against it.
But now this is not a new deck. This dominated almost in Atlanta, so everyone was ready for it here. So Boston's had plenty of time to learn this matchup. Not that he wouldn't know how to anyway, but the intricacies you might not get first time out.
Exactly, just the things of knowing when it's important to remove, because obviously against most decks in Hearthstone at the moment, you want to remove all minions going into turn 5 because of Fungal Mancer. Obviously, in even Paladin, that's not a consideration. It's turn 4, it's turn 6 because of Blessing of Kings and Spike Ridge Steed. It's little things like that you really need to be worrying about as to when you push out your removal cards. Which, again, Bozzzton here saying, okay, Swipe is kind of worth a consideration. It gets rid of that Armani Berserker before it can get too big. But leaving the Ooze up, Blessing of Kings is still a problem. Let's just go with the Branching Path and try and set up for maybe that Spreading Plague got off the top.
Like that's where it's going to go. Ooh. Another thing that's hard when you're learning to play against a new deck. So as the Druid, you have to learn, first of all, you do the basic thing of like, how do I stop it killing me? What's it doing? But then you have to learn how they're going to react to what you're doing. Like, we can see Faeli's probably going to minimize that board and make a big minion. Yes. That's kind of the way to get around the Spreading Plague. And Bozzzton's like, okay, I'm not going to let you minimize your board. Make that wide board, let me Plague, and then I don't have to worry so much about the big guy because I have Plague in the way. I've saved the Naturalize. You get to play against what their second level strategy is, so you go one level higher.
And this is a surprisingly interesting turn, I think, here for Faeli, where even though whenever I describe this matchup, I always say Corpse Taker into Blessing of Kings. That's the 1-2 punch that you're looking for into Druid. I would have heard out an argument very strongly there for just playing Blessing of Kings on turn 4, because it plays around Coin Spreading Plague, whereas this play, well, I guess it still does, because you could then Blessing of Kings the Corpse Taker and take out 2 of the Scarabs.
Yeah, and then there's Mind Control takes a consideration as well.
Yeah.
Like,
it's close. It's very close.
One of the features of Faeli's play, I think, has been he is not scared to do the thing that looks wrong if he thinks it's right. He's not scared to go into that Spreading Plague. He's not scared to go into that Mind Control. If he thinks that's the way, if he thinks that by delaying he's going to lose, he'll just go into it and say, okay, good luck, steal my Corpse Taker, beat me.
And so while this was somewhat playing into the Spreading Plague, by not going with the Blessing of Kings, the cleanup operation from Faeli, I think, is more than acceptable.
Yeah, and the Spreading Plague's out of the way by getting your opponent to have to use it early. I know there's a second one, but you tend not to play around the second copy of things. You can now go wide as much as you like with only one more fear.
This has actually worked out very nicely for Faeli. Definitely, now that I look at it, the right way to play around it, even with the quote-unquote punish of the Spreading Plague.
Yeah, I mean, you might get punished by 20 health now as 35 later.
Yeah. There was the possibility on that turn to have put the Blessing of Kings on the 1/1 Silverhand Recruit instead, because it plays less heavily into Naturalize and also less heavily kind of into an upgraded Spellstone. Like, you want to have your threats spread out against Druid when they could Naturalize your biggest minion. It would have cleared off less Scarabs, I believe, so it's probably not worth it because you don't want to play too heavily around specific cards, but it's a consideration at least.
I think Hero Power Moonfire looks pretty good here. But it does wipe out your Swipe, which you're desperately trying to cling on to, but this looks like the best Swipe you're going to get.
I don't feel like you're desperately trying to hang on to your Swipe.
Sure.
It's not like against Odd Paladin, where I would absolutely agree. It's the card. You need to hold it for as long as possible. In this matchup, if they're making one dude a turn, you're much more afraid of Tarim, the Lich King, or Tyrion Forge.
And you've got Malfurion next turn.
Yes.
I guess he's considering, do I have to Wild Growth? Is there any reason I need to Wild Growth this turn? Probably come to the conclusion that he doesn't by the look of this.
Yeah.
But I guess that goes through your mind. It's like, oh, I'm not playing Wild Growth, therefore I should pay a lot of attention to what I am doing here. This could be a mistake.
And like I said,
it's fine.
This is it. Knowing the break points, you're not allowed to play Wild Growth there because you're going into turn 6. What if they were to go for the Spike Ridge Steed on this turn?
Yeah.
That would be a huge punish. Because you're taking a lot of damage, then you probably have to use the Naturalize, then they follow up with the Lich King. Whereas because Bozzzton took the active decision to clear everything off on that turn, even though it meant ramping a little bit less, Faeli's turn now is just really bad.
Yeah, even Paladin doesn't punish you hard on turn 6 on an empty board.
Exactly.
What's a hero power? It's got 5 mana. I always talk about these odd-numbered turns in even and odd decks, and it's just not great. He's got Malfurion to slow things down, and then look, the rest of his hand just curves into drawing cards and blowing things up.
Even Paladins push their advantage. They don't create particularly big boards quickly.
And now Bozzzton just has a minion killing machine in Malfurion as well.
We're going to be running into, I would imagine, pretty soon, the big grievance that Korra has with this deck, in Even Paladin, is that it doesn't draw any cards. If the Lich King is dealt with on board, or the Spikeridge Steed is dealt with, there's not all too much left in the hand to actually consistently put a threat on the board.
Another reason that Bozzzton's held on to his Naturalize, we saw games yesterday where if the Even Paladin could force the Naturalize out, that card drawing problem is solved.
Good point. Very good point.
They just start coming into it on turn 10 again.
What to do?
Bozzzton's other consideration was here.
Yeah, clearly not sure whether to go for poisons or taunts.
Yeah, the Divine Shield makes a bit of a mess of things for your decision making here.
Yeah, he's afraid of Steed, he's afraid of Consecration. I think if you get Consecrationed here and that's their whole turn, you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
Because look, even though Faeli has the Consecration now,
that's everything he's got.
He still probably plays the Steed, right? You play it on the Kangor, which then doesn't die because it's Divine Shielded. It doesn't take damage from the poisoned minion.
Yeah, and if again all the one card turns you can face, and Consecration's basically a one card turn because you know the 2-drops have been exhausted.
Because what Faeli is definitely expecting in the next couple of turns is either Lich King or Ultimate Infestation into an Arcane Tyrant, which requires an Equality Consecrate. That's a really powerful combination of cards that he wants to save, maybe for the second Spreading Plague that could come down. Whereas Spikeridge Steed is just a decent card here.
Yeah, Faeli's not rushing this. This is a tough one.
Reporting for duty.
I think the consideration there is, when will I ever have a good Consecration in this whole game? Well, what Druid things have 2 health ever?
That's what I'm saying, is I think the fact that he had a quality in hand means his Consecration has a very good chance of actually being good later on in the game.
Well, so something I found with Faeli's play, and I try to characterise different players slightly differently because they do have styles, is he's not scared to say, okay, I've got 2 Pyromancers and another Consecration in this deck. You know, they're in there, the game's not going to end the next turn.
He plays like he'll draw the best card.
He plays like, if he thinks he's got time to draw the best card, he'll play with that in mind. He's not, again, he's not scared to take the chance that, okay, each card's about a 1 in 6, 1 in 7 chance of drawing that. I'm going to draw 3 or 4 cards, the odds are on my side, and if it goes wrong, I lose a game of Hearthstone, I'll just win the next one.
And to be fair to Faeli, if he was considering what Bozzdton's likely plays were, there was a very good chance that Lich King just came down for Bozzdton on that turn, on turn 8, against which having a 1-1 on board and playing a quality there into Spikeridge Steed was a very strong turn. Yeah, trade in the 1-1 and push damage face.
Equality is fine in its own right. Sometimes, like you say, those particular instances.
Yeah, I think that might be the fact that I'm overlooking, is that Equality definitely doesn't need a Consecration to be good. It just so happens, however, that it would be pretty good here. Yeah. With a Consecration to go along with it.
I guess that
this is the punish.
Because we're used to even decks being more control-y, where you can't really waste that Equality Consecration because you've got to clear, but here actually you're going to have the board a lot of the time for long periods this game.
But if the only punish for Faeli was exactly the second Spreading Plague, I'm okay with him not playing around that.
Well, there you go. That's how he's chosen to use this Equality. And as it stands, Bozzdton's hand, it should be fine because he's got card draw in there, but currently isn't doing a lot. Again, it's Druid, so in 2 turns' time we'll be saying, what do you mean it's not doing a lot? He's got every card he could ever need. But at this exact moment...
It's so strange as well how that 1-1 Crystal Smith Kangor for Bozzdton is actually a massive nuisance.
This is why I had to play this deck when I got home from Atlanta, because until you play the Kangor, you don't realise how non-terrible it is. You look at it, you go, oh, could you not afford a 2-drop? Did you just have that in your collection? And then when you play it, it's got so many just different versatile uses. Obviously, the lifesteal against aggro really helps you stabilise.
The lifesteal against Druid. If he goes Alex Straza face and is met with Blessing of Kings, up to 25, straight away, just like that, in one attack, Faeli basically mitigates everything Alex Straza did.
Death is eternal.
And so he has to Moonfire it, which is really bad.
That's his second Moonfire gone now. He had to use one to clear up earlier, so no surprise Malygos death, which helps a lot when you're playing against Druid, obviously.
It really, really does.
Wow. Looks like a straightforward Tarim after the trade, but...
I think there's a good amount of consideration for Lich King on this turn. The fact that Lich King has Taunt. Yeah, sorry, or trade into it. Yeah, so I agree. Yeah, Tarim is
It's
the way
always
to go.
this pressure to play Corpse Taker as quickly as possible before you draw that stupid Wind Fury Harpy mess. Have I ever mentioned that card? It irritates me. That you have to.
You have to play it.
The deck feels so contrived because you have to play a Wind Fury Harpy. But actually, it's fine. Like you play it, it's quite hard to deal with a 4/5, no matter how badly mana costed it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just does its thing. If you don't want to draw it, you want to draw Corpse Taker, of course. Oh, there you go.
There's the thing. The thing that Druid does. With the Ultimate Infestation picked up, that is the perfect card here for Bozzdton, leading perfectly into 10 mana to get the train rolling. Where he points it, though, is a very difficult question.
Yeah.
Because I would hear out the call for just pointing it face. I think because he's used both Moonfires, maybe that's less valid. But it's a consideration.
He also needs to factor in that he's probably going to play a 4/4 this turn.
Okay, good point.
So the trades will work out. Yeah, there's the 4/4 of which I speak. So the 4/4 being bigger than the 2 3/3s that are left over is kind of a consideration too. This Innovate that's come back into Mali Druid.
I like the
so
Innovate.
good. You wonder why it wasn't there all along sometimes.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Innovate.
I mean, it doesn't matter on this turn, but how good would Innovate Naturalize be here in so many situations? If Faeli had played the Lich King, for instance.
Yeah, that's just what I think was realised, is it's used so much less often for innovating out something a turn earlier. We're just going UI Innovate into Naturalize or Spellstone.
Because it got cut because it lost its ramp ability.
Yeah.
And then it's back because of exactly what you just said. It's pretty silly.
Still
and also,
no... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
7+4 comes up a lot in this, so sometimes that's handy with, you see, so Florist Swipe or Florist Twig. That does happen enough.
Yeah.
It's the sort of card you don't have in a non-tuned deck. We've had this deck for forever, it feels like. And so all the weird one-offs that most people hate when they first build a deck because it's not consistent, you soon learn, you can have a one of this because 20th level reasoning because everybody's done so much of the deck.
And what it also means is after Faeli makes whatever play he makes on this turn, probably, Corpse Take again, nice to go a little bit wider. Naturalize, Innovate, Ultimate Infestation is not that bad for Bozzdton. If he thinks he can just completely dominate the board with that play, then go for it. It gives your opponent's card, but maybe they just can't deal with your board.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, it gives them cards but not choices.
Yeah.
When you naturalize on turn 5 into their 6-drop and you give them 2 more choices, it's really punishing. Here it's just some stuff
Have some
will be
more
drawn.
stuff.
Yeah, it's a pain, but that's all. But there's also the temptation to never use naturalize here if you possibly get away with it, because you're just not going to lose to a card and a hero power.
It was just one consideration.
Yeah.
Of which there are obviously many. Swipe doesn't quite line up correctly.
I mean, there's so many choices, of course, that Innovate. Like Ferocious Howl into Innovate Lich King or something completely bizarre like that is on the table. So many ways to populate, but get that twig doing its thing. Seems to make sense to me. Although, do you really need it?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you do need it.
Do you ever win this with the Malygos combo, or do you just win because you kill them, because they run out of things? Yeah.
Interesting.
The Innovate getting a lot of use there. And he is just going to win this with, or try to win this with the mana advantage from the Florist rather than any sort of combo. Like, a 1-mana Lich King is just a pretty good card. He's just going to try and outvalue Faeli here because he sees that the card advantage is so crazy.
On a first impression, though, I get the suspicion that this is the most punishable line to go for, because you've played the Twig, you've played the Florist. That means that Malygos becomes a lot harder to get a combo going with.
Yeah.
If the second Ooze were to come down and destroy the Twig, that means Floop is the only way to get a cheap Malygos now.
On the other side,
whereas just like playing Lich King on that turn, you could have just gone Lich King hero power and done very much the same thing, but had the Lich King in play instead.
Yeah, I quite like how he did it, because you have a 4/4 that challenged the board as it was to a large degree.
It's true.
And now you have a 1-mana Lich King. You've saved 7 mana in a place where you're trying to outvalue your opponent.
So you go for one big explosive turn instead.
Yeah, and look at the
That's
options.
fair.
You can deal with anything in Hearthstone with that hand that he had.
Yes.
So even though it was punishable, you'd have to punish him 2 turns running with the same thing, the same style of punish.
Ooh, very nice card to get off of the Ferocious Howl to upgrade it straight away. It means now swipe Spellstone if he wanted to give up what is, I think, his last vestige of damage at all from Malagos. If he uses the swipe, that's both Moonfire's swipes used, which means he would have to win on the board, which means that DreamHack for Faeli could be really, really bad for Bozzdton.
Yeah, this is something about that Paladin deck. When you haven't played it much, you don't spot instantly. It's irritating. Every card it draws, there's not many whiffs.
Yeah.
Like there might be an Armani Berserk or something that whiffs, or I think there might even be a Pirate in Faeli's deck, too, from what I remember yesterday. But, yeah, deal with this. And he has resisted using that Naturalize, that weak spot of the deck for the whole game. There's been 3 or 4 times he could have done that.
Point. Yeah.
And he's taken what would look like a chance or two to not have to give away those 2 cards.
And it's a very, very conscious choice, because on that turn where he used the swipe, he had the choice between saving the swipe and thus leaving his Malagos draw live, or using the Naturalize, or using the swipe and getting rid of the Malagos ability. He has given up on the Malagos plan with this swipe completely. He is dominating the board, is his game plan. Which means that Frostmourne is such a big card to get off the Lich.
It's insane.
That is
it's
insane.
Always got a target.
Yeah.
My thoughts are
Even if it just gives you 3/1/1s.
Yeah, that's fine in this situation.
It's something.
And
I mean,
also it breaks
more
the
likely
twig.
it just goes face.
So you get a free Frostmourne. It costs nothing to play.
Fair point.
Just get your mana straight back.
Fair point. I mean, yeah, he probably ends up stripping it all face instead of getting 1/1s. It's the hope. But again, we saw this from Maeve Donovan as well yesterday, where she was willing to go face a lot against even Paladin when the punish is often very much there. Oh no, wait, he just says...
Yeah. It's not lethal, but it's
almost lethal.
It's draw your way out of this one, sunshine lethal.
That was a very cute play.
And that's why he had to think so long about that play, because...
That was a very cool play.
If you're going to UI there, you had better win next turn, because you are going to start getting into fatigue issues.
Which means saving double Naturalize is brilliant, because even if you get hit with Spikeridge Steed...
Isn't it nice when your whole story comes together just as they draw the card? And there we go.
Man, this was just clever from Bozzdton, because when he played the Dream Petal Florist, that was the turn I was most suspicious of, because I thought, why aren't you saving the Florist for the Malagos? That's how you swing the board back. But the very next turn, he just threw away the second swipe.
Yep.
He knew right from the or from very early on, that Malagos was never his game plan.
I think the second Moonfire is where he chose that.
Right,
Get
exactly.
the second Moonfire. If I use this, I'm not going to bother with Malagos because it's too tweaky and messy. And it turns out that saving 7 mana on a Lich King is actually just all right.
Exactly, and what seemed like very, to me at first glance, plays that weren't optimistic enough. They weren't going for what the deck is trying to do. It worked together very beautifully in a very cohesive game plan.
I think modern Hearthstone is very much about remembering what your cards do rather than learning what your deck does. Like, you do the basics of your deck. I'm trying to kill them with a Malagos combo.
Yeah.
But then you look at your cards and it's like, oh, this makes my Lich King cost 1.
Right.
Wow. Like,
being versatile with your combos.
I'm being very sort of almost facetious here in the way I'm wording it, but it's like, wow, my cards do this as well as what...
Yeah.
Just turn your brain off almost and play the cards if you're seeing them for the first time.
Well, it's a good point you raise. There's a lot of players, when they start playing Malagos Druid, myself included, when I first started playing it, I was much too rigid with the way I played it. Every game, I tried to go break the twig, Malagos, swipe, Moonfire. Whereas most matchups, your win condition is Druid stuff.
Yeah.
Your cards just do things and you win. You don't need to go for a big combo.
The other big deck for that for new players was always Miracle Rogue. Like, you end up going
Good
turn
point.
1, backstab a thing, turn 2, kill your thing, turn 3, something, SI7 agent, I've got no cards left, how does this deck ever beat anything? And you have to sort of learn, hang on, I have to fiddle around with these cards and use them optimally.
Yeah.
And Freeze Mage is another. It used to be, okay, I keep dying on turn 6. It's like, why have you died with 2 Frostbolts and a Fireball in your hand? Oh, don't I need to kill them with those?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Kill the minions and stay alive. You'll kill them later with something else. So yeah, learning what to do with your deck, but that's becoming more and more prevalent in Hearthstone now. The decks are becoming much more focused. They've managed to go much more focused on what they do, but much better at dealing with things outside of their focus as well, which is really weird.
The wild.
And while it's always unfortunate to lose, maybe not a favourable, but a decent matchup there for Faeli with his Even Paladin, I feel like that was not the most devastating of losses. The Even Paladin didn't feel like his sweeper deck to me.
Yeah.
I think that was more the token druid is really what he's hoping will carry him through to victory.
Yeah, Even Paladin sweeps. The reason it's such a good deck in Last Hero is it does sweep so many lineups, but this isn't that lineup.
Yeah. It's close. I feel like it's got very winnable matchups against everything.
I mean, it loses to like Big Spell Mage, and that's about it.
It loses to Odd Warrior. I think it's the
And
worst
Odd
matchup
Warrior,
for Even
yeah.
Paladin. Yeah.
But even that, I mean, even that, sometimes you just go, Valanier, you, and my stuff, and...
Oh, yeah. It's far from unwinnable. But Bozzzton here has got himself a very juicy hand indeed, with the Wild Growth, the Nourish, the Naturalize, pretty much everything you're looking for to get the ball rolling.
Can we start printing cards that say, if you've drawn this card, this other card can't be drawn? Like, when you play Wild Growth, Nourishes are in the bin. You're allowed one of them, but the other two cards just get exploded from your deck the second you play Wild Growth.
They have printed that card. It's called Patches. Once you draw a Pirate, you can't draw Patches.
Very good.
It looks like Bozzzton is actually considering the floop on this turn. Maybe he's just trying to make Faeli think he has something. I personally would save the floop back for something a little bit more optimistic, but if he's maybe thinking, next turn I'm just going to go Naturalize, Tyrant, floop anyway, why not get it down a turn earlier?
Yeah, I'd love to know what his thought process is here exactly. Whether he's genuinely really thinking about that, or if he's just going to go, hey, but what's he representing? Nothing.
Yeah.
You're representing floop, which is what you've got, so...
And in my experience with playing floop as a 3-4, which it sometimes is, you can definitely consider it. Whenever I go for it, it goes wrong. And even though I'm sure a small percentage of the time it's correct, I usually just steer clear from it because it so often goes wrong and
Talking
just
of
dies.
this is just the most disgusting Hearthstone turn ever. Say that a lot about it, but this is just absolutely disgusting. And the double swipe will tempt Bozzzton into just going straight for combo here.
How do you feel about the Nourish for ramp, though?
That's a really good point. I hadn't even considered that could be wrong.
You don't even think about it so often, do you? Because
looking at his hand,
it's Nourish. You ramp with it. That's what you do.
I think that's a really good spot. Yeah, nourishing for cards there.
Like, he couldn't play Naturalize if he drew, which means he would have, what even is that, 7 attack and 8 health less on the board. That is a huge difference.
Just looking at what can he draw next turn that isn't good now he has 8 mana, though?
Quite a lot of stuff. Like, Naturalize is probably one of the better draws.
Because he's got the board, he's got 2 or 3 draws. I mean, I think I think I'd have gone for cards there, but he's got 2 or 3 draws. There's Malfurions, there's UIs in the deck. I don't know, whiffs are things like Ferocious Howl. Obviously, Moonfire is a bad card to draw there.
No. Well, like, Ferocious Howl is a good draw. I think that's one of the better ones. But I just often find I often ramp too much with Nourish.
Oh, for sure. And especially not in this deck, but in Token Druid.
Right.
Like, Token Druid, you don't need
more
10 mana.
in Token.
Just get more cards and keep the pressure on.
But
that was a good spot, yeah.
I just feel there are more bad draws than you would think in Malagos Druid. It's not all card draw like you would expect. There's quite a lot of dead draws that you can get.
Yeah, and I wonder if Bozzzton's thinking that himself. He doesn't seem overly happy with that decision, although he's a very hard man to read. That's one of the... Yeah, one of the things about him is we don't see much from him a lot of the time.
A very red reserved man.
Nice. You're on absolute fire this morning.
Thanks, Lorinda.
It must be the jersey. The jersey?
The Christmas cheer.
The Christmas cheer.
My jumper, yeah.
Did you ever think you'd see me in Christmas garb, Derek?
I did not.
Nor did
Christmas
I.
miracle.
But the combination of what Faeli has had done to him over these first few turns is actually left him in a bit of a stew here.
Yeah. And again, I also want to point out from Bozzzton, it seemed like quite an obvious play, but I do like the use of Naturalize there, even though he's afraid of Hooks Reavers in the next few turns and things like that.
I mean,
playing it before the Geist, I think, is more important.
He's one off lethal next turn.
Really?
Yeah, Yeah, it was never happening because of taunts, but yeah. Oh, no, you can't get through. I don't think.
No, wait. Double swipe face.
Is 8.
Moonfire and hero power, the guy.
Yeah,
That's just
it. That's
lethal. Oh, no, wait. He
No,
doesn't have
got
mana for hero. He doesn't have mana for hero power.
He's one
Oh,
short.
oh, that's so close. Wait, so if he can double swipe face.
He just goes, yeah. Single swipe face. And just say...
Oh, he's 1 damage off lethal. Oh.
Yeah, because it saved 2 damage and then put 2 damage, so he's 1 off either way. The Moonfire would have been lethal without the taunt. But if you
just hero power face, that demands heal.
Yeah, and healing
and
doesn't
removal.
Taunt and remove, yeah. And that's what he's going through now. I think he's going to hero power face. He's just going through, okay, these are the cards I know Faeli has that can heal. Do any of them stop me winning? And he will be a bit scared of Spellstones here. Because that's the card that swings a lot around.
Do you think when Bozzzton went for
I
a
think he
turn
thought he
5
had-
nourish, do you think do you think he expected this outcome?
I think he thought this outcome wasn't terrible and the other outcomes were also good. I think he had this in mind as a possibility. Like, your whiffs have become cards.
Okay.
Which wasn't what I was trying to say at the time, but what is now becoming fairly apparent.
So now, if we were to see Shroombrewer face, Shroombrewer up to 10 plus Sun Fury, that would mean swipe down to 9. That would be lethal, right? Because it's swipe down to 9, 7 on board, Moonfire hero power would close out the game.
This is silly.
This is silly, I quite agree.
Who's the aggro now?
I think that's just it.
Bubblies and yummies! Shields up!
Well, there's a whiff.
That's it.
But it doesn't matter. 4,
Oh,
plus
man.
3, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Even I can do that. It's,
By the skin of his teeth, Bozzzton edges over the finish line in one of the craziest Malagos Druid games I think I've ever seen, and goes up 2-0.
Where are all the people now that's saying that Eviloc's an aggro deck, huh? But it did come down to a very good starting hand.
Absolutely.
But he used what
Absolutely.
looked like an absolute miss. And I agree with you, it looked like you should nourish for cards there.
Yeah, I would not have made that play,
Yeah.
and I would very likely have lost the game because of it.
Yeah, because you'd been so behind on the
Exactly.
tempo that Faeli would have had time to start making his 6 drops. And maybe Bozzzton did see that as an opportunity. Oh, hang on, all my bad things are small minions, which are fine on this board. Like, what's an MC Tech going to do? Oh, it's actually a 3/3 to add more damage. Maybe he saw the 2 routes are either I draw the good stuff that I was talking about, or the bad stuff happens to work. And it sounds convoluted, but Bozzzton is the sort of player who is capable of making that future
brave
read.
play. Yeah, and even though I'm certain there will be very strong Malagos Druid players who also would not have done that.
Yeah.
Who would disagree with his play.
And have probably done so already to us on Twitter.
Exactly. But even if it wasn't necessarily correct, I am really enjoying watching Bozzzton play here today. His play has just been very creative and a joy to watch.
I seem to be saying it a lot, but that's because we've got a lot of these players that people don't know very well at this tournament doing well, but the players that we know, the regular tour players. And I've enjoyed a lot of this tournament so far because we are seeing these players that we know are good, and they're showing they're good.
Whew. Speaking of showing that you're good, the old Twig Nourish UI coins, or Coin Innovate UI, is a really nice way to get this game rolling.
Interesting, yeah.
Especially when you're up against Token Druid, MC Tech as well can be a very powerful card. He is going to be looking for some of the more reactive cards like Swipe and Spreading Plague, just to make sure that he doesn't get overrun in the early turns, which, as it just so happens, he could be. This is a powerful hand from Faeli.
With only 1 Whispering Woods, he might just not lay it out there because of Swipe. We've got 2 in hand. The first one you just chuck on the board without thinking and see what happens. So interesting to see how the next 2 turns progress with either player. Coining Twig's always good fun, and it does control 1/1s quite nicely. Because then you can use your mana. I know the hero power does, but you're not doing anything else those turns. I think this is coining Twig and when not to coin Twig and when not to innovate Twig, etc. Those are the plays that people have played a lot of Malagos Druid just seem to nail every time.
Yes, and I agree that in general it can be quite difficult. I think this is fairly easy though, if I'm honest. Just the fact that you go Twig on 4, Nourish on 5, and then you have 8 mana, Coin, Innovate, UI probably happens thereafter. It's smoothed out very nicely.
Right, how do you want to progress, Faeli? Double Chain Gang's quite interesting because you can just start making your own 2/3 tokens rather than 1/1 tokens over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, he needs to think about how, like, if he goes Whispering Woods and it does stick, how good is it? How big is the upside if the swipe is not there? To which we can see he could only play Savage Roar or Branching Path as a buff card on the following turn, which would not be lethal. So I can respect taking it a little bit slower. If the punish for not having swipe was Faeli wins the game on the spot with double Savage Roar, then I could understand it a little bit more.
Quite like the double Chain Gang in consecutive turns because, well, maybe not so much now, it's got to think now. But with the double Chain Gang plan, you're saying, hey, here's an army of effective 2/3 tokens. Bozzzton has to respect that army. And whilst you have this sort of mini game going on, you're getting to turn 8, and then you can just do the thing that you do with the Whispering Woods and Soul of the Forest. So this is like occupying Bozzzton, stop him getting too far in front.
Yeah.
Because he has to respect things like double Savage Roar now. And then you're getting to turn 8 with your messing up. You just nourish into turn 8 next turn. Because why wouldn't you? Well, we said earlier, sometimes you don't because of card draw. You've got UI and a bunch of 4-drops. That's a different scenario.
And this becomes very interesting for Bozzzton now because one of the first things you learn about this exact matchup with Malagos Druid versus Token Druid is Spreading Plague is not as all-powerful as it seems. You need it to win the game the vast majority of the time, but it can be your undoing if you play it recklessly, because if you play it into a board of 1/1s, they sacrifice off all their 1/1s and play their own Spreading Plague in response, and then you can never kill their Scarabs and you lose the game. Whereas playing Spreading Plague into a bunch of 2/3s is very good, because they can't sacrifice off their own minions and play a responsive Plague. So Bozzzton, I think, would have been very heavily considering just going Coin Plague Tyrant on that turn. That was just a strong play.
And Faeli's saying, look, I'm going to make you deal with this stuff. This is what I was talking about the sort of the messing around before turn 8.
Yeah.
He's not even nourishing into it. He's just going, okay, you have to deal with this mess. And it is not easy to deal with this mess.
It is not at all. And this is the benefit of playing Faeli's list, which is a little bit outdated, I think we could argue, with the Chain Gangs instead of the Teachers.
Yeah. I don't know what's outdated and what's ahead of the time anymore with this deck. We've gone through so many iterations of scenarios, not scenarios. Chain Gang, not Chain Gang.
I mean, I think since the
Strong Shell, not Strong Shell.
Since the Giggling Inventor nerf, this feels like the less popular version.
I think one thing that's underrated at tournaments when it comes to those sort of choices is, do you want the most modern deck, or do you want the deck you've played a million times exactly card for card? Yeah, it's a close call. The extra 1% you get from having the better deck is often offset by the fact you're 3% better because you've played the other one so many more times.
And I was going to say, I think newer players will tend to go with the list they're more comfortable with, whereas pros will play the more up-to-date list, but I don't even know if that's necessarily correct.
I think the trap newer players, especially first tournament, what am I going to do, is they feel pressured into playing the best decks. They think, oh, tournament, I've got to go to this tournament with the best weapons I can. Well, the best weapon you can go to a tournament with if you're a first-time player is the stuff you're good at. Yeah. Because then you're going to play your best, you're going to not feel under pressure all day, and if you lose, you'll know why you've lost, so you can go away from round 1-0-1 and just go, okay, I know what happened. Whereas if you lose with the new tools that you don't understand properly and you lose, you all day is like, what did I do? I've been so unlucky. Oh no. And now the real game starts.
Yeah, things
with
are
him on 7.
Very much awkward here for Faeli. Bozzzton's decision to hold back on the Plague for a turn. Obviously, drawing the second Tyrant helped, but it's worked out very well for him. He's been able to dominate the board here, put himself in a very good position, leading up into what I imagine will be an Innovate Ultimate Infestation.
Faeli realising here that he didn't need to mess around with Soul of the Forest, because if my opponent's going to play Ultimate Infestation next turn, then he's not killing my 1/1s. And if he's swiping next turn, well, he's not playing Ultimate Infestation.
Well, yeah, he only had 7 mana last turn before he played the Nourish, so like I don't think
sorry, yeah.
he really had the
Yeah,
ability to play it all too well.
I can't count to 8. Not until I've had that many coffees, at least.
But it does mean that Faeli is not, I don't want to say forcing, because Bozzzton still had the option, very much so, to go for Innovate UI, but making Bozzzton feel like it's necessary to go for mind control tech. I would imagine Innovate Malfurion as well.
I think he has to, because he's dead to so many different things here. Because Ultimate Infestation to face puts you to 2 and then just hits them with minions.
He's really afraid of having this many minions on the board, though. Because what if he's plagued?
I think it's past that point. I think it gets to the point where you can't beat it. So, yeah.
The Scarabs is very nice. I like the Scarabs, even though you almost always go for taunts in this matchup. Because he's ahead on board, he wants to be able to kill off... Okay, so yeah, this is how you play around Plague, isn't it? You get taunts instead... You get spiders instead of taunts. Because it kills off the Scarabs.
And it kills off the 2 extra Scarabs, so it's the same thing. That's cool.
Even though he's only on 3 health, you know, it seems crazy to go for taunts here, spiders, sorry, when you're so far behind in terms of health total. But I like it.
I keep on about the slight differences between the pro players and the sort of strong casual players. Faeli picked up UI there like any good, decent, sensible human being would. And then he thought, hang on, I have other options here. I can't just make a wide board and Soul of the Forest. Do I have to? And then 20 seconds later, yeah, you scrub, of course I have to, and move on with your life.
And so I was going to say that Bozzzton might not have the option to go for Ultimate Infestation on this turn because he dies to double swipe. Obviously, though, with a Twig on 1 durability, he can have a really powerful turn here.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how he actually tries to win this game.
Yeah,
because he's got 2 options now. He's actually got a good enough board to start hitting people.
That's
now it's
one
getting
branching
excitable.
path. Yeah, he has to break the Twig this turn. He's just afraid of dying to double swipe.
I think it's exact lethal, but I don't count too good.
Oh.
I think it's 30.
I don't think it is.
Changed my mind.
Death is eternal. My turn.
I think it's 27 or 26.
We're going to find out.
Yeah, 26. But still.
Yeah, I know, I'm wrong, but it's 26.
Oh, he couldn't attack with the weapon.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot about that as well. And so did Bozzzton. He forgot he'd already attacked with a Twig. Went for attack instead of armor. It's probably not too important in this game, but with the pickup of exactly the spreading blade
my
off the top here
goodness.
for Faeli. He's in the game, right? Swipe needs to be picked up for Bozzzton.
I mean, Swipe
And
is
he
just
wins the
lethal.
game.
I think he's got enough stuff to get through so much of this, or maybe he hasn't.
But there's still the 2-2s afterwards.
Maybe he hasn't.
He hasn't got double swipe. Can he get through for
anything? No. Spellstone, can you buff that? So your hero power, buff the Spellstone. It's not enough.
Well, no, because if he wants lethal on this turn, he has to go swipe hero power face.
Yeah.
If that Spellstone was a 6 attack one, I think he would just have lethal. Because he'd be able to kill off the 1 remaining Scarab.
Yeah, that's why I started with the armor, but then, like you say, you can't attack for 3 at that point, so...
Oh, this is so close.
Death is eternal. My turn is not.
Oh no, wait, that's it. He has it with the Spellstone because he swipes the minion instead. What a spot there from Bozzzton. He finds the lethal even through that massive spreading plague. And he goes 3-0 in what was, aside from the attack with Malfurion mistake, one of the best played games of Hearthstone I've seen all weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know casters miss lethals, but I was always missing that one. I'm not even going to put it down to casting. That was just a nice
That was a tough
work.
lethal and very good spot.
Because you automatically think the 7-5 is going into the thing.
Yes,
you start adding 4 for the swipe and 3 for the face, and then you think, no, it's a 7-mana minion. You get an extra attack by splitting it into 2. Of course you do. And Bozzzton just cleaning up there, and every game was interesting, despite the fact it's a 3-0 with Druid, which, you know, if you go into a news report and say, someone won 3-0 with Druid, you're like, headlines, great. But he did that in 3 different ways in 3 different games.
Yeah, he got the good cards in a lot of the matchups, but he played them in ways that I think a lot of players would not have done so. Ramping with the Nourish when he only had 2 swipes left in hand and somehow finding exact lethal 2 turns later. It's
Not using Naturalize at all in game 1 until lethal.
right, exactly.
Like-
It's stuff like that, which is realizing what the weakness of your opponent is and really exploiting that to the maximum degree with some very nice play.
Yeah, if you're learning that deck, I think you've got 3 different ways to go with it there. Not one of them was Malygos Moonfire you.
That's true. That's true.
Bother with that old chestnut.
Yeah.
So we are going to take a short break. We're going to have more round 1 or round, what are we? Round 6. Know your rounds, Neil. More round 6 action coming up after a very short break. We're just going to get them into the area for you.